Welcome to this episode of ACG's Growth TV. I'm joined today by Michael Lipe, Managing Director of Brand and Marketing Strategy for Insperity. Michael joins me to talk about creating a positive employee experience and why this is so important for businesses today. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Katie.
So to start, can you talk about what you mean when you say the employee experience and why this is critical for businesses in today's environment?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It is more critical now than perhaps it's ever been. So the employee experience defined as sort of every stage along the employment journey. So from the point where they were hired to the point where they onboarded into the organization and got to know their role and their team, all the way through their various performance reviews, and ultimately to a point where they're either resigning or retiring from your organization. That's the extent of the employee journey. And at every point along that way, you want to be thinking about what the experience is that individual's having. Now more than ever, as we're competing for talent, having the ability to have a positive employee experience is probably one of the very best ways to recruit new people into your organization because they become advocates for you as an employer. And I think at the end of the day, it's one of the very best ways that we can connect the employee experience to the customer experience, which is obviously a revenue generating function. So having a great customer experience begins by having an outstanding employee experience.
And how does an employer go about figuring out what drives their employees and how to create an experience that's going to create satisfaction for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you do is you start by acknowledging that there's no longer a one-size-fits-all approach to this. I think if we learned anything through the pandemic, it's been that we've had to learn to adapt and adjust to different work styles. And in some ways, we've lost some things. In some ways, we've gained some things. And I think if you look at every individual, you need to think about what is it going to be to maximize their productivity and their purpose around the work that they're doing. Sort of in a fun way to think about it, there's this idea of FOMO, or fear of missing out, right? And many employees really had FOMO during the last 2 years where they were not able to engage with their colleagues and have those impromptu coffee break conversations, which oftentimes spur great ideas and great collaboration. But on the other hand, I heard someone reference the idea that there's this thing called JOMO, which is joy of missing out, right? Kind of a funny way to look at it, but it's this notion of saying for many employees who think about structuring their day in such a way where those interruptions or those disruptions really break their ability to be as productive as they can. I think we found that there are individuals that have been as productive as ever during this time. So they appreciate the fact that they're given the flexibility to work in a way that maximizes their opportunity and their potential. And I think employers today have to really recognize the fact that not everybody's going to be in a certain situation. So it's going to be a continual balance between what's good for the culture, what's good for business results, but also what's great for the employee to maximize their productivity.
And given that there is no real one size fits all, as you said, sounds like there's quite a bit of work on the employer side here, which may be a bit of a burden on a smaller or mid-sized company. So what advice would you have for a business like that in terms of how they get started with this and then how they measure success?
Yeah. Well, there's several things here that I think go into measuring success. But I think one of the first things we need to look at today is when you think about particularly an issue that's prevalent right now, as we talk about the Great Resignation and this notion that we have this sort of dueling pressures of people that are resigning from their current positions, maybe being offered other roles that are not geographically bound, potentially for even significantly more money. Then you also have this other factor of this wage inflation that's happening as a result of what's happening in our world. Those two dueling effects can have a tremendous impact on your ability to create that employee experience that's consistent across the board, particularly when you think about pay equity practices, when you have these loyal employees that have remained with you throughout this sort of time, this turbulent time, but they're seeing new people come in that are potentially the rumors on the street that they're getting paid significantly more money from a talent standpoint. Installing those pay equity practices are really critical from a risk management standpoint that business leaders need to think about when they're considering what's the right thing to do by their employees. There's so many other ways that you can do. It is a heavy lift, as you described. It's the kind of thing that you want to be as proactive as you can about. If you're waiting till after the issues have happened, you're continually in sort of cleanup mode. But particularly when you're thinking about an M&A transaction or merging two organizations together culturally and operationally, if you can think about those HR practices that need to be in place ahead of time, working with a great HR partner that can help you do that, that will help solve a lot of the downfield problems that might occur. So Insperity is pleased to be able to do that. We've worked with tens of thousands of small businesses that are growing and thriving, that are really acknowledging the role that people play in their business success. And we're just honored to be a part of their journey.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Michael.
Thank you, Katie.
I'm Katie Mulligan for Growth TV. Thanks for watching.